most cars are dead long before they reach retirement age, often around the 150,000-mile mark due to expensive repairs. However, legendary engines from Toyota, Honda, Chevy, and Ford are engineered to cross 500,000 miles, some even more, with proper care. Achieving this longevity isn't just luck. It's about strict adherence to specific habits, synthesizing critical shop rules from experienced mechanics. Rule 1. The oil change showdown. Manufacturers often recommend long oil change intervals, like 10,000 to 15,000 miles, primarily to get cars past the warranty period. Following these extended intervals can lead to a complete internal disaster, as oil loses its crucial chemical properties, thickens, and oxidizes. This sludge clogs tiny oil passages, starving critical parts like variable valve timing systems, pistons, camshafts, and lifters of lubrication, causing rapid wear. For conventional oil in older cars, stick to 3,000 miles. For full synthetic in newer engines, the absolute maximum for longevity is 5,000 to 7,000 miles. Rule 2. Non-negotiable synthetic oil and viscosity. Synthetic oil is crucial for its superior resistance to thermal breakdown and better cold start protection. It holds its viscosity when hot and stays fluid when cold, minimizing unprotected contact time during cold starts, where most engine wear occurs. Always use the manufacturer's recommended synthetic viscosity, whether it's 0W, 20, or 5W, 30, as improvising can throw off engineered oil pressure and affect critical systems. Brands like Mobil 1, Castrol Edge, Amsoil, and Valvoline Advanced Full Synthetic are consistently recommended for their proven additive packages and track record. Rule 3. The gatekeeper. A cheap oil filter is dangerous because it's the only thing stopping metallic wear particles and contaminants from circulating through your engine. If a filter clogs, its bypass valve opens, allowing unfiltered, contaminated oil to rush through, which is like brushing your teeth with sand. Brands like Wix, Fram Ultra Synthetic, Bosch Premium, or OEM filters are recommended for their quality media and stronger internal structures. Rule 4. The double O-ring mistake. During an oil filter change, the old O-ring can stick to the engine block, leading to a catastrophic leak if a new one is installed on top. This double gasket prevents a proper seal, causing a massive, instantaneous oil dump when the engine starts, potentially destroying the engine. Always visually inspect the block's mating surface to ensure it's clean and only one O-ring is present before installing the new filter. Rule 5. Transmission fluid. Don't wait for the slip. Many drivers ignore transmission fluid, assuming it lasts forever, but this leads to costly repairs. By the time you feel symptoms like harsh shifts or slipping, the damage is already done, often requiring a $3,000 to $7,500 replacement or rebuild. Transmission fluid degrades into liquid sandpaper by 60,000 miles, filled with microscopic metal and friction dust that grinds away internal components. The proactive schedule for longevity is a simple drain and fill every 60,000 miles or 6 years, whichever comes first. Rule 6. The used car transmission warning. Never flush an old, neglected transmission in a used car with over 100,000 miles and an unknown history. The accumulated sludge might be the only thing providing friction, and a high-pressure flush can wash it away, causing instant transmission failure. Instead, perform a simple pan drop and drain and fill to replace some degraded fluid without disturbing the system's delicate balance. Always use OEM-specified fluid, as universal blends can cause overheating and immediate clutch failure due to specific friction modifiers. Achieving 500,000 miles requires diligent maintenance, adherence to these mechanic-approved practices, and a proactive approach to fluid changes and inspections. Okay, next up is the engine's temperature insurance, the coolant. What are we really trying to prevent here beyond just boiling over on the side of the road? We're trying to prevent a complete thermal disaster. Modern engines, especially with their lightweight aluminum heads, are highly susceptible to heat damage. How hot is too hot? Aluminum warps really quickly, often at just 230 degrees Fahrenheit. One significant overheating event, if you ignore that gauge for even a few minutes, is often catastrophic. And you had an anecdote about this. Yeah, the story about the Tacoma driver. He ignored his temperature gauge for 8 minutes, just 8 minutes. And it led directly to a $3,800 head gasket failure and a severely warped cylinder head. So the rule is, if that needle hits red, you pull over and shut it off. Immediately. But then there's the slow, silent damage that people don't see. Coolant isn't just water. It's a chemical mix with corrosion inhibitors designed to protect the internal metal surfaces, especially aluminum. Over time, usually 3 to 5 years, those inhibitors break down. And then the coolant goes bad. Once they're gone, the coolant literally turns acidic. And this acid actively starts to eat through the aluminum heads, the radiator, and the delicate seals of the water pump, all from the inside out. So if you skip that 5-year flush, you're essentially running acid through your cooling system. That is the reality. You need to flush the old coolant out and replace it every 3 to 5 years, or about 50,000 miles. And here's a major warning. Never mix coolant colors. It's not just for aesthetics, is it? Red, green, yellow, clear? They are not interchangeable. They represent different chemical bases and, crucially, different inhibitor packages. If you mix 2 incompatible coolants, you can cause a chemical reaction that turns the whole mixture into a thick gel or a slurry. And that clogs everything up. It clogs the tiny passages in the radiator and heater core, which kills your cooling efficiency and just accelerates corrosion. Always use exactly what the manufacturer specifies. Rule 8. Never drain before checking the fill plug, okay? We've covered the big 3 fluids. Now for a critical preventative habit that's more about the human element, especially for the DIY mechanic, the rookie mistake that strands you, the fill plug rule. This is non-negotiable, and it applies to any sealed fluid system, differentials, transfer cases, manual transmissions. And the rule is so simple. Never drain before you remove the fill plug. Walk us through that scenario. Why does that happen? Because the drain plug is usually at the bottom, and it's easy to get to. But the fill plug, the one you need to put the new fluid back in, is often on the side or the top, exposed to all the elements. So it gets seized. On an older car, that fill plug is frequently seized solid or stripped or rusted in place. So if you drain all the fluid out first, and then you spend 2 hours realizing you can't get the fill plug open, you have a car that cannot move. A perfectly good vehicle is now completely stranded because you can't refill the differential. It requires an expensive tow to a shop just to have them drill out a seized plug. That is a massive labor bill from one simple procedural mistake. It is. Always check that you can successfully remove the fill plug before you let the old dirty fluid out. Rule 9. Decoding the fluid. Detective work, and while that old fluid is draining, you have a critical opportunity to play detective. Absolutely. You're looking for warning signs. You're looking for 3 things. First, the color and smell. Is it dark and burnt? Second, a metallic sheen. If the fluid looks like glitter, that's metal coming off your gears and bearings. Not good. And third, any sludge or large chunks. If you see pieces of clutch material or chunks of metal, you know you have thousands of dollars in repairs coming your way. Catching it now means you can schedule that fix instead of waiting for a catastrophic failure on the highway. Rule 10. The smart warm-up. We tend to focus so much on what we physically put into the car, the fluids, the parts, but how we interact with it, especially in those first few moments after startup, is just as critical. Let's tackle the right way to warm up. We have to debunk the classic myth of long idling. Long idling, 10 or 15 minutes in the driveway, is one of the most destructive things you can do to a cold engine. It really is a slow death. So what's happening mechanically? Why is it so bad? When an engine is idling cold, it's running rich. It's injecting more fuel than it can efficiently combust. After about 30 seconds to a minute, that unburned, raw fuel starts washing down your cylinder walls. And fuel is a solvent. It is. It strips away the protective oil film. It also contaminates and thins out the oil in your crankcase. We call it fuel dilution. This scores the cylinder walls over time and turns your expensive synthetic oil into a much weaker lubricant. So the goal is to get the engine and the oil up to operating temp as fast as possible, but gently. Exactly. The smart warm-up procedure is simple. Start the car, wait about 30 seconds for the oil pump to get full circulation. Just 30 seconds? That's it. Then drive away immediately. Just keep the RPMs low, below 2,500 for the first 5 to 10 minutes until the temperature gauge starts to move. Driving puts a light load on the engine, which warms everything up to 8 times faster than just sitting there. Rule 11. The quarter tank rule moving to the fuel system. We have 2 critical rules that happen right at the pump. First, protecting the pump itself with the quarter tank rule. Why does running near empty kill a fuel pump so effectively? It's a heat issue. The electric fuel pump is submerged inside the gas tank, and it relies entirely on that surrounding gasoline for cooling and lubrication. Ah, I see. When you constantly run the tank down to fumes, the pump gets exposed. It starts sucking hot air instead of cool fuel. That overheating dries out the seals, stresses the electrical parts, and just burns out the motor prematurely. And that's not a cheap repair. Not at all. A $600 to $800 repair usually. And it often happens before 80,000 miles, simply because the driver is habitually pushing that fuel light. And there's a second reason too, right? Yeah, when the tank is that low, the fuel sloshes around and stirs up all the dirt and sediment from the bottom of the tank. That dirty mix then gets sucked right into your fuel filter and injectors, causing all sorts of performance problems. So the rule is, keep it at least a quarter full at all times. Rule 12. Stop at the click the second. Equally expensive mistake happens when you try to get every last drop into the tank. Stop at the click. You warned this is a repair that can cost between $350 and $900. What are we destroying when we top off? We're destroying the emission control system, specifically the EVP, or evaporative emission system. The gas tank needs airspace. When fuel evaporates, the resulting vapor gets funneled into a charcoal canister, which is designed to capture and store those vapors before the engine burns them off later. So the canister is designed for vapor, not liquid fuel. Exactly. When you keep squeezing that pump after it clicks off, you're forcing liquid gasoline into that system. That liquid floods and soaks the charcoal canister, which ruins it. It ruins it. And that's an expensive part. But worse, it can destroy the delicate sensors that regulate the EVP system pressure. Once that system fails, you get the dreaded check engine light, and the repair involves replacing the canister and potentially a bunch of expensive solenoids and sensors. So when the pump clicks, walk away immediately. Rule 13, top-tier gas and staying on fuel. Let's talk quality. Top-tier gas. This is often confused with high octane, but you're talking about preventative chemistry. Exactly. Top tier has nothing to do with the octane rating. It refers exclusively to the mandated high level of detergent additives in the fuel. These detergents are the secret sauce for longevity because they prevent carbon buildup. They're crucial for preventing it. Carbon accumulates on the intake valves, especially in modern direct injection engines and inside the fuel injectors themselves. Cheap, low-quality gas just doesn't have enough detergents to keep these areas clean. And that buildup chokes the engine over time. It chokes its ability to breathe. That leads to a rough idle, misfires, bad fuel economy, and eventually, you're looking at expensive cleaning procedures or even part replacements. So using top-tier gas is genuinely an investment that adds mileage to the car. It's preventative maintenance you do every time you fill up. Sticking to brands that meet that standard, Chevron, Shell, Mobil, Exxon, Costco, BP, it ensures your injectors and valves stay clean. It's one of the easiest habits that can add a conservative 100,000 extra miles to your engine's useful life. Rule 14, airflow and throttle body cleaning moving from fuel to air. Let's look at 2 critical components for letting your engine breathe. First, throttle body cleaning. Why does the throttle body get so choked up? The throttle body is basically the butterfly valve that controls how much air enters the engine. Over time, a mix of oily vapor from the PCV system and combustion residue settles in there, and it builds up. That sticky film turns into a thick, black carbon buildup that lines the throat of the body and the edges of the valve. This restricts airflow, especially at idle, and causes the computer to struggle to find the right air-fuel mix. So what are the symptoms? A rough, unstable idle, sluggish acceleration, or even stalling when you come to a stop. And the cleaning process has to be delicate. Very delicate. You use a specific throttle body cleaner, not carburetor cleaner, sprayed on a soft cloth and gently wipe the carbon off. You never use a screwdriver or anything hard because you can scratch the sealing surface and cause a permanent vacuum leak. Do this every 15,000 miles. Rule 15, mass airflow sensor care the mass airflow sensor. If this tiny wire gets coated, the engine is basically flying blind. That's a good way to put it. This sensor measures every single breath the engine takes, telling the computer exactly how much air is coming in. But oil vapors and grime quickly coat its delicate platinum wire filament, which throws off the reading. When the wire is dirty, it sends false, low air signals to the computer. This means the computer calculates the wrong amount of fuel, either too much or too little. The result is poor performance, terrible gas mileage, and rough idling. And the warning here is about how you clean it. The critical warning. That wire is incredibly fragile. You only use MF sensor cleaner, which is safe for the plastics and the filament. Never touch the wire. Never use compressed air. A few targeted sprays, let it air dry, and you've just restored your entire air-fuel system to peak efficiency. Rule 16, OEM versus aftermarket parts. We've established that proper maintenance is critical, but when parts inevitably fail, choosing the right replacement is just as vital. This brings us to OEM versus aftermarket. The lesson here is pretty harsh. Cheap parts kill good engines. This is where so many owners sabotage their own longevity efforts just to save $50. Aftermarket parts, they might look identical, they might fit physically, but for critical components, that's where the similarity ends. What's the difference? Their material tolerances, the quality of their internal plastics, their electronic signaling can all be significantly off. So an aftermarket sensor might fit, but it's not speaking the right language to the car's computer. Exactly. It might send a voltage signal that's slightly too high or too low, which just confuses the engine management system. This leads to those intermittent check engine lights, poor performance, and potentially damage to other components because the engine's running out of spec. So, for which components is using OEM parts considered protection, not just an upgrade? Anything that senses, controls voltage, or holds high pressure and heat. So that means ignition coils, all your major sensors, O2, MF, cam, and crank position sensors, fuel pumps, and especially internal engine parts like timing belts, water pumps, and head gaskets. The most critical stuff. OEM parts are made to the exact specs the engine was designed for. It's an insurance policy against a premature catastrophic failure caused by a cheap part. Let's start with Rule 17, the parking brake protocol, a habit often ignored by automatic transmission drivers. Inside the transmission, a tiny metal piece called the parking pawl locks the transmission when you shift into park. If you park on a hill without using the e-brake, that tiny pawl holds the entire weight of your 3,500-pound car, leading to significant stress and wear. That sickening clunk you sometimes hear when shifting out of park on a hill is the sound of excessive force on this delicate piece. A failed parking pawl often requires a full transmission teardown and rebuild, a costly repair. The simple solution: always engage the e-brake first, then shift into park. This ensures the stronger brake calipers bear the load, not the delicate pawl. Do this every time, on flat ground or a slope, to eliminate thousands in potential repair costs. Next, Rule 18. Corrosion and the undercarriage Washington rust is a silent killer, especially in snowbelt states where road salt is aggressively used. Salt is pure acid to steel, creeping into frame rails and eating through brake and fuel lines. The F-150 story is terrifying. A brake line snapped due to severe rust corrosion while towing, leading to a life-or-death situation. We must focus on washing the undercarriage regularly, especially after exposure to road salt. Applying a preventative rust inhibitor or an oil fill manually is the best defense against this cancer. Now for Rule 19, rubber, mounts, and plugs. Let's talk about the flexible rubber components that hold everything together. Rubber has a definite lifespan. Heat, oil, and time cause it to harden and crack, leading to catastrophic failures. A burst radiator hose means instant coolant loss and engine overheating, while a snapped serpentine belt causes immediate loss of power steering, charging, and water pump function. Inspect belts and hoses every 50 to 60,000 miles for cracks, frays, bulging, or soft spots, and replace them immediately if anywhere is visible. Related to this is the engine mount deck test. Failed engine mounts allow excessive engine movement, causing damage to spread throughout the vehicle. To diagnose, with your foot on the brake, shift into drive, and gently rev to 2,000 revolutions per minute. If the engine lurches or jumps more than an inch, replace the mounts. Finally, spark plugs. While rated for 100,000 miles, real-world conditions, especially with direct injection engines, often require earlier checks. Worn plugs cause misfires, which don't just lead to a rough idle, but can destroy expensive parts like ignition coils and catalytic converters. A consistent misfire can melt the internal structure of your catalytic converter, requiring a multi-$1,000 replacement. Start checking your plugs around 60,000 miles and stick to trusted brands like NGK, Denso, or Bosch. A $60 set of plugs changed on time prevents a cascade of expensive fixes. The final, critical habit, shop skepticism. This is about the vigilance and habits of mind that truly distinguish the 500,000-mile owner. First, listen to your car. Turn down the radio and pay attention to sounds, vibrations, and smells. Ignoring subtle signs can turn a small, cheap fix like a $40 squealing belt into a catastrophic $1,200 alternator failure. Next, tire health and suspension strain. Proper tire inflation and alignment are fundamental protectors of the entire steering and drivetrain. Underinflation forces the engine and transmission to work harder, while overinflation reduces the contact patch and traction. Misalignment introduces constant abnormal strain on critical suspension components, accelerating wear dramatically. Check inflation monthly and get alignment checked every 10,000 miles or after hitting a major pothole. This culminates in maintenance ownership and shop skepticism, the single most important habit for extreme longevity. Ownership means taking responsibility, keeping records of every oil change, fluid top-up, and repair. This gives you critical insight, allowing you to notice patterns like oil darkening too quickly or consumption increasing. This knowledge empowers you and leads directly to shop skepticism, your best defense against unnecessary service. Many service writers push quota-driven repairs. Be an informed owner. The anecdote about the brand new Corolla and the throttle body cleaning perfectly illustrates this. An informed customer politely asked for photo documentation and manufacturer's specifications, causing the service writer to back off the unnecessary repair. Ask questions, demand proof, and get a second opinion before approving big, urgent repairs. This vigilance saves you thousands. Finally, the absolute stop doing this immediately list. Habits that inflict acute, preventable damage. Ignoring leaks. Even a slow oil drop lowers oil pressure, starving critical internal parts. Many engines burn oil quietly. Check your oil level weekly and address any drops or leaks immediately. Overloading or towing beyond the vehicle's rating is a guaranteed path to premature failure. Exceeding limits stresses the engine, transmission, and cooling system, causing lasting, irreversible damage. Lugging the engine. Driving in too high a gear at too low an RPM forces the engine to struggle under load. This causes excessive vibration, engine knock, and heavy loads with insufficient lubrication, a slow, self-inflicted internal injury. Just let the engine rev where it's comfortable. Reaching 500,000 or even 700,000 miles isn't a miracle. It's the result of consistent, meticulous respect for your machine. It's the cumulative effect of these 19 small habits that lets an engine far surpass its expected lifespan. If consistent preventative attention can add decades to a car's life, What other aspect of your life would benefit from adopting that same 3K mile rule of constant, consistent preventative attention? Where are you ignoring the low oil warning in your own life? That's something worth mulling over.